For you guys on the call, as a DSC, I'm sure you've been told this many times over. You have the most lucrative career and contract in athletic. Now, you have more direct influence over your income, bonuses, and any other position that we have in the company. Now, that being said, you guys also have probably the toughest position in the company as well. You guys are essentially responsible for keeping the company going, implementing and influencing all of the trainings and the resources, everything that headquarters is throwing down to you. But unfortunately, you guys are rarely ever giving the support focused specifically to you guys and making your business better and, again, growing your business. That is specifically what we're designing these training classes to do over the next 2 weeks. And I'm incredibly excited to bring this to you. Now, guys, I had the good fortune to be a district actually twice in my career with Aflac. The first of which was over in Illinois South, so huge shout out to my Illinois people. My team, phenomenal team. I'd love to say I had anything to do with it, but I had a great group of agents. And we ended up going 6 FAMEs in our first 7 quarters as a team. Now, when it was around 4th or 5th FAME, give or take, my market director pulled me aside, and it was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. He's like, you know what, congratulations, your team is doing absolutely amazing, but is it on purpose? And I kind of did a step back. I was like, that is, what jerk? No, come on now. But as I thought about it over and over again, it wasn't. I mean, my God, we were winning by sheer weight of activity. We were out there marketing and hustling and just going and going and going. But that wasn't sustainable. You know, and I've seen many positions do this over the years and many coordinators do it over the years. But again, if that person's ever removed, the team tends to fall apart. And that was exactly evident. When I took a region in Chicago, my entire team disappeared and everything that we had built was completely gone. Now, I had the opportunity to move back into a DSC position down in the DFW, which I'm excited. We're going to have one of your leaders talk with us a little bit later on today. But we took a team from about 300,000 to 1.6 million in 3 years. And guys, I promise you with 100% certainty, that was on purpose. We took the training, the resources, and a lot of the processes that you guys are going to hear about over the next couple of days, and we implemented that into a system and simply repeated that system over and over again. And that's what I'm really excited to share with you guys about, is to give you the training and the tools and the resources to be able to put those systems in place for your team and your operations, so that way you guys can continue to scale and grow this. Now, I'm not sure how obvious Aflac has made this. I think it's pretty clear. We move into 2021 and hope to dear God out of this pandemic for everybody. The true winners are going to be the teams that can rebuild themselves the fastest. Now, whether it be the compensation changes, the new product offerings, the resources, the technology, everything that Aflac is throwing at you guys, and guys, trust me, it's coming at all of us as well. It's all designed to give you guys the tools and resources to grow your teams as quickly as possible. Our goal as a training community over the next couple weeks is to make sure you have the support to put those processes in place to make sure that happens for you. So guys, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be bringing you a series of trainings to give you the example, or more importantly, best practices and examples of how to capitalize on those opportunities. So today we're going to be discussing profitability, business planning, time management, and prioritization. And I'm incredibly excited that's going to be led by Ryan Wessner of Missouri West, Monica White of Nebraska, and we got JoLynn Mack from the Dakotas. Next week, Thursday, December 10th, we're going to be focusing specifically on how to recruit from a district standpoint. And when I say that, it's not about how do we do interviews as a district, but it's how do we find the right people to grow our business based on the needs of our organizations. I'm incredibly excited to have Meg Rod Gunther from Missouri East helping with this. And then more importantly, later on that afternoon, we're going to dive into our training and development, agent onboarding and development. And that's going to be with Morgan Gallagher from Texas Houston. Now, the next day, Friday, December 11th, we're going to focus specifically on asset management and how to leverage that book of business, whether it be taking over an existing or more importantly, maximizing that current book for you guys to create more business opportunities for you. And that's going to be led by Jaron Rice from the Dakotas and Naomi Grippentrog from Nebraska. Sorry, Naomi, I hope I pronounced that right for you. And then that afternoon, we're going to have our own Kai Hand and Jen Boyd from Missouri West jump in and talk about broker development and how to reference or how to really grow that broker segment in your business, how to leverage some of those resources. Finally, on Friday, December 18th, we're going to dive into performance coaching with Anna Gaines from Texas South and our very own senior producer growth consultant, Austin Peterson, to bring this whole thing home. So, guys, there's a lot of really good information coming at you. All of those classes, this one included, will be from 9 to noon. So make sure if you haven't registered, get out there, follow those links, and we'll make sure we resend the rest of those out at the end of the class today. But, guys, I'm going to over to my counterpart from Missouri West, Ryan Wester, to talk about how we can get you all making some real good money right now. So, Ryan, good morning, sir. How are we doing?
We're doing great, Donnie. Excellent job setting the tone for today. And, along the lines of what you said, we know that being a successful DSC requires a lot of hard work. It requires blood, it requires sweat, and it requires tears. That being said, we're going to do this on purpose. There are a few select areas where we can be strategic and focus that hard work. We're going to refer to these select few areas as the buckets of profitability. It's still going to take hard work, but by focusing on these buckets, we can make it a little less bloody, a little less sweaty, and possibly eliminate the crying altogether. So we're going to look at a chart here on your screen. All right, and on the next point there, we're going to look at a chart, and it's from an example of a $600,000 district that overachieved and maxed out the bonus potential. Now, make no mistake, DSC profitability is all about the bonus structure. However, I will challenge you to think about it differently. To me, bonus implies a little extra or icing on the cake. What if we look at it as part of the built-in compensation structure? So from the example you see on your screen, we know that 27% of the income of this case study came from personal production. 33% came from the DSC override, 15% from renewals, and 25% of that was from bonus. Now, 25% of the annual income seems way too significant to be considered a bonus. Too significant to just be considered nice to have or icing on the cake. To me, it seems like the difference between profitability and just getting by. But let me ask you, what does it look like to you? So as we move on, we're going to look at the buckets of profitability. Now, to achieve buckets of profitability, we need to focus on the buckets of profitability. See what I did there? That's a play on words. So those buckets are quota, total AP, existing account premium, EAP, new accounts, and NASB, new agent success bonus. So as we move on and focus on the first bucket, total AP or a quota. Now this is the bottom line. And I will say just hitting quota alone is not maximizing profitability, but you won't be profitable without it. So let's start here. Now what you see on the screen is the first of a couple of definitions. And for this business planning conversation, we do need to define a few terms. The first one we're going to define is average weekly producer. So the technical definition, now you can't look that up in Webster's, so I kind of had to create it myself. But that definition is over the course of a month, a quarter, or a year. This is the average number of writing numbers that show up on report with production each week. Now, one note, because I will be referring to writing numbers here, I'm not implying that the folks on our team are just numbers. That is not the intention whatsoever. Each one of our folks has a story, a family. They have past and future victories. They are people, or they have people that are relying on their success at Aflac and the goals that they're working towards accomplishing. The reason I'm referring to writing numbers in this context is because that's the unit that shows up on report, and it encompasses new, veteran, and producing brokers. So a couple of examples on the screen. If you have 5 associates on your team, and they show up on production every single week, then you have 5 average weekly producers. There are a few subcategories as you start looking at the report cards. There's average weekly new producers. That's referring to producers in their first 52 weeks. We have average weekly veteran producers. Those are producers in their 53rd week and beyond. And we have average weekly unique producers. which is just each unique writing number that shows up in that specific time period, and it's only counted once. But don't worry about those for right now. You can see the report card on your screen. So as a coordinator or as a DSC, it's probably no coincidence that the total average weekly producer number shows up. It's at the very top. It's the very first line. And that number that's circled in red there is what we're looking at today. Average weekly producers total, top line. So let's move on. Let's go back to defining terms. Now we have to define average weekly producer growth. What does that mean? One more definition. This is referring to an increase in writing numbers that show up on report on a month-to-month, a quarter-to-quarter, or a year-to-year basis. That is average weekly producer growth. Average weekly producer growth is critical. It determines whether or not quota is achieved. So think of it this way. If NASB, new accounts, EAP, and hitting quota, if those are the buckets of profitability, average weekly producer growth is the well that fills those buckets. And we can't have a planning conversation or a business planning conversation without mentioning average weekly producer growth. It's probably the most predictive metric we have in all of Aflac. So if you like to take the guessing game out of your business for 2021, this is your answer, average weekly producer growth. Let's talk football. Hitting quota as a game of football or as a football game. You and your team are on offense. You're the O's. Our job is to move. Can we back up just one more? We don't want the Reds up there yet. Moving the ball down the field and getting to the end zone represents hitting quota. But who's on defense? Who are the X's? What might prevent you from scoring? Those X's could represent lost account, associates that quit, associates that retire, low new account activity, poor new account skills and abilities, or lack of coaching and talent development. And in this example that you see on the screen, the offense and the defense are equally matched. If the talent of the players is sufficient, and if the coach calls the right plays, the chance of scoring is about 50-50. Now let's go back to those red O's, Ralph. This is what it looks like when we try to take the field with too few players. In our world, this is called an average weekly producer deficit. The chances of this team scoring or achieving quota go down quite a bit. For this team to score, it would need to have all superstar players. It would need to have a Hall of Fame coach calling the plays. And those plays would probably look like flea flicker, Statue of Liberty, Hail Mary, onside kick, and repeat. In our world, what this looks like is always having to land the big account. It would require us to only work with the 10%ers, the superstars, which sounds great, right? But by definition, they can't all be 10%ers. They would be called 100%ers in that case. But that doesn't work. In this case, also, the coach, that's you, would need to grab a helmet and play every single down because we're short players in this scenario. And it's difficult to run the business when you're in the business 100% of the time. The next screen is going to show us what we're shooting for here. This is average weekly producer growth. Now, you football fans are out there shouting, this is illegal. You'd get a flag thrown. It is illegal in football, but it's not illegal in Aflac. Totally legit. This team doesn't require every player to be a superstar. Just competent in the blocking and tackling of scheduling appointments, running DMPs, enrollments, and asset management. So moving forward, we're going to look at one more example, or actually two examples. This shows, take a second to let all that sink in, but this shows one DSC on the left who was up 1.4 average weekly producers for the year, and one on the right who was down 1.6 average weekly producers for the year. All right, so what does that mean? If you're up by 1.4 average weekly producers each week, or what that means is each week during that year, that district had on average 1.4 more writing numbers hitting report than the year before. If you're down by 1.6 average weekly producers, what that means is each week that district had an average of 1.6 fewer writing numbers hitting report each week than the year before. Now remember, as we focus on average weekly producer growth, or we do focus on it because it's predictive and it's reliable and it's valuable as a central point of focus, also known as a lead measure. So as you look at the numbers on that screen, think about this for a second. Could you take any of the other metrics that are listed there, move them up, make them a central focus, and have a similar impact across the board in all metrics? Probably not, and that's why we choose average weekly producers. So let's get to some business planning takeaways now that the table's set a little bit. We need to determine, on the next screen, we need to determine the number of players needed on our 2021 team. That's the end point of this section right here. How many players do we need on the team? So the first step here is we need to find your market's average weekly producer value. Now, why is it your market and not yours? And your market trainer can definitely help with this step. And market trainers, what I'd recommend here is taking week 52, 2019 year to date, traditional AP divided by the total average weekly producers for your market. And when you do that, what that tells you, that number is how much each average weekly produces each week. It's an extremely, extremely valuable number to know. Now, this number will vary from market to market, but it doesn't change much within the market. And when we talk about average weekly producer values changing over time, we talk about it in terms of decade to decade, not year to year so much, because it does not move very quickly. Now, this is what makes it so predictable, or that's what makes it so predictable and such a great planning tool, because it doesn't change that much. So let's look at the next step there. Once we know that value, so what we've just found is we found the value of an average weekly producer. To get to the point where we know how many players we need on our team, or how we use that number to help us figure that out, we start by finding. Now that we know what that value is, we take our first quarter quota and we find our weekly quota, and then we divide the weekly quota by your average weekly producer value. And I know we're kind of getting into some math here, but it's okay. Take a deep breath. I mean, it's 2020. For those of us that have kids, we're all math teachers anyway, so we should be fine here. But I will slow down and back up just a second. So we found the value of our average weekly producer, but we're not done yet. Okay, so we take our weekly quota for the first quarter and divide by that value, and that's going to tell you how many average weekly producers we need. So we know the number of average weekly producers we'll need, but we're not done yet. We need to find the number of players, or the number of writing numbers we need on the team. Okay, keep in mind that not every writing number equals one full average weekly producer. And just like in football, not every player is on the field for every single down. On any given play, there are as many players, there are as many or more players on the bench as on the field. So in Missouri West, each new associate equals about 0.3 average weekly producers, and veterans equal about 0.5. So therefore, again, and we're going to fix this in the final step here, or account for it, it takes 2 to 3 writing numbers to equal one full average weekly producer. So if we click one more step on the screen, this is where we're going to adjust for it. Okay, so let's pause right here. Let's stay right here on this screen. Let's look at our example. So we took, in Missouri West, we took our week 52 year-to-date traditional AP number, and we divided it by our total APs. And that gave us a value of 2934. That's how much an average weekly producer produces on average. In this case, we took an example of a DSC who had a first quarter weekly quota of 6731. So when we do that math, 6731, that's our weekly quota, divided by our average weekly producer value. That gets us to 2.3 average weekly producers required. So far, so good. Now, one thing we should point out, if you're a DSC and you know for a fact that you will be producing each and every week, at least in the first quarter, week in, week out, you know you're going to hit with production, you can subtract 1 off of that number because you do count towards that as well. So if we take 2.3 minus 1, we need 1.3 average weekly producers. And then we adjust because, again, not every writing number equals an average weekly producer. We multiply that by 2.5 to correct for that. That equals 4 players. We need to take the field in 2021 with 4 players to make sure we have the team to support that weekly quota. One note about your weekly or your first quarter quota. If anybody knows what that is right now, I would be shocked. Okay, so if you don't know what your weekly quota will be, set the target for yourself. Get with your RSC and get some help setting that target. If you take anything away from today, take this. Don't wait on headquarters to tell you what your achievement looks like. You set that for yourself. All right, I think we can go to the next screen now. Actually, back up for 1 second, Ralph. That was my bad. I'm sorry. There will be a follow-up worksheet, a takeaway worksheet that'll have these key calculations and help you plan for this. I believe that'll be out later today. But if you want to take a screenshot, now is a great time to take a screenshot. Okay, now we can move on. This takes us to our next bucket, existing account premium, EAP. Now, while having the required number of average weekly producers will get the job done, this is one of the first areas we can focus on to maximize profitability. But again, even though we're on EAP, I still have to harp on average weekly producer growth, because without that growth, the following categories won't matter. So EAP, this is pretty basic. We start with what we have. Just like in MIPS with the new associate, we always start when we're planning for targets, we start with what we have, what's already accounted for. And that's no different for us as coordinators. We're going to start with our book of business, what we already have. How does average weekly producer growth tie into EAP? Still not done with that topic. You may have the best playbook and be the best play calling coach in the league, but that won't matter if you don't have the players on the field. So to translate that for Aflac terms, in our world, that means that you might have a solid book of business, you might have strong asset management strategies, but it won't matter if there aren't enough associates to go to the enrollments. All right, finally, I will segue to EAP now. Systems and visibility do most of the heavy lifting here. And stay tuned on December 12th, Naomi and Jaron are going to show us how to dominate with these systems next week, so stay tuned. For planning, you're going to look to your MAA and CCLM to find out what your Q1 book of business generated in 2020 open enrollments. Now, with those systems in place, the 90, 60, 30 cadence of REDMs and scheduling the open enrollments, with those systems in place, there are 2 things that you can do to add to that structure to boost your new account results. The first is the post-enrollment survey. And we'll be able to see that on the screen. But the post-enrollment survey, this is from the referrals course, Market Trainers, it's slide 34. Everybody else, it's form number Z181-381. But this is a simple way. Take it after your open enrollments. Make sure you take this to your post-enrollment meetings, because it's a very simple way to get account feedback and segue into asking for introductions and referrals. So again, we're using that structure, that cadence of asset management, and using it to boost new accounts. And then on to the next screen. The one other thing that you can do, that you can add to this structure, is having a 4-corner marketing strategy. So this usually involves having an ideal referral list or a referral wish list, geographically centered on that existing account. You can use Data Axle Genie, formerly Sales Genie, to help build that pretty quickly. And then once you do that survey, if the survey goes well, ask for introductions from the list. If the survey does not go well, then at least you have some great leads to call on and use the 4-corner marketing approach. So as we move on and we talk about what is the business planning takeaway for EAP in terms of planning, here's the takeaway. Find what your book of business produced in the first quarter. Is going to be an essential step in planning. We're going to maximize, on the next step, maximize EAP with a solid asset management strategy. Again, stay tuned next week. While maximizing time and maximizing the quality of your business life by making those exact same activities generate new account. Which takes us to the next bucket. The next bucket being new accounts. There we go. New accounts make up the difference, or all of the difference if you don't have a book of business, but they make up the difference between quota and EAP. And maybe you're in a situation where you can achieve your quota on just EAP alone, and if so, that's great. That is an excellent situation to be in. But remember that this is about maximizing profitability, and new accounts are going to play a major part in that effort. So let's look at a few bullet points here. There are two options. Since we're planning right now, or that's the stage that we're in, we have to figure out what our new account target is. We have a couple of options on that. We can go with the one that we're assigned, or you can go with the one that you need to make up the difference between quota and EAP. So you're going to have two options. You're going to be assigned a new account target. You may not know that right away, but through this planning, you can also establish what the target would be for what you need to make up the difference to hit your number. Now, if those two numbers are different, and they will be, my recommendation would be to choose the higher number. The higher number is always better, and that's probably going to be the latter, the one that you need to actually make up the difference between quota and EAP. Knowing the new account target is important, but what we're after here is knowing what activity is going to be required to generate those new accounts. So a little bit more math here. And once we fill out this screen, and this is a good place to pause and take another screenshot. But the takeaway here is just to determine what new account activity do we need in the first quarter. So the first step, we need to figure out how many new accounts that we need. Okay, so step one is to determine how much AP we need the new accounts to generate. That's step one. So, and then once we do that, next we use that to get to a new account number. So let's walk through those steps. The ones that you can, the steps that you can see on the screen right now. Remember, we decided what our first quarter quota was, and we figured what our book of business is likely to generate in the first quarter. So we take quota minus our EAP forecast, and the difference, what's left, that's how much AP needs to come from new accounts. The second bullet point there, so that new account AP needed divided by your average enrollment that is generated by a new account, that's going to tell you the number of new accounts needed. All right, so how much or what is your average new account enrollment worth? Do you know that off the top of your head? If you do, then you can skip this next part. But if you don't, there's probably a few ways to find it, but we're going to use CCLM for this. All right, next screen. First click, you're going to go to your account page in CCLM. That's the first click. Second click is going to be make sure you're looking at all accounts, all statuses. The third click, you're going to go to the account age column, and you're going to make sure that's filtered to new only. So those are accounts in their first 53 weeks. We click one more time, and that's just showing the filtering that we're filtering for new. Okay, so let's pause right there. The steps were accounts. There we go. Make sure we're looking at all of our accounts, and then filter the account age by new. And then on the next screen, we're going to export what we see to Excel. And the reason we do that is just because we can make Excel find an average for us. If you only have a few accounts on this page, then you can do it by hand. But on the next click after you export it, you're going to look at current year AP, because that's showing you what your new accounts have generated in their first year. So if we know what that average is of that column, what that's telling you, or what does it tell you, is a better question. That tells you on average how much each new account that you open generates for you. Okay, so let's go back, not go back, but let's go forward. Let's go back by going forward. There we go. Next step. Now that we know what the average new account produces for us, put some more bullet points on the screen. All right, so let's backtrack. We found a total AP number that we needed from new accounts. Okay, we used that, or we're going to use that to find the number of new accounts needed. So we take that total AP. Here's all the AP we need from new accounts. We divide that by the average new account enrollment. The answer is the number of new accounts that we're targeting, right? That wasn't the final step. If you remember, the final step was trying to figure out what activity we're going to need. We're going to use our ratios to figure out what that activity is. This is where these ratios, the three key ratios, come into play. The three key ratios, and I know this is a refresher for everybody, is DMPs to scheduled enrollments, DM contacts to DMPs, or decision maker presentations, and then finally approach to DM contact. Those are our three key ratios. All right. Now, I'm sure everybody on this call knows exactly what they are for your team. But just in case we're not sure what those are, I'll show you how to find them. We're going to use CCLM to figure this out also. And we'll be able to see that on the next screen. The CCLM ratios are from the SAT coaching dashboard. So if you've already been a DSE for a while, just use your team's ratios. If you'll be a brand new DSE on January 1st, use your own personal ratios to forecast what your teams will be. Because your ratios or your skill sets will probably be the starting point for your team. But consider this. Are your team's ratios likely to be higher or lower than yours, or more effective or less effective? That's something to think about. And then finally, if you and your team don't have any data in CCLM, hopefully your market does, because it's really, really difficult to business plan without data. So let's move on. Actually, let's back up one screen. Sorry, Ralph is going to kill me. Sorry, Ralph. A few thoughts about referrals. If you're looking at this and you're looking at your ratios and you're saying, well, maybe they don't really apply to my team. And I'm not sure whether they'll be accurate because, we rely heavily on referral marketing or we want to rely on referral marketing. You can still account for that because when you create a referral, make sure you add it as a lead in CCLM and mark the lead source as a referral. When you contact the referral, make sure you're logging it as an approach, either in person or phone call. When you speak to the decision maker of that referral, make sure you're logging that as a DM contact. Because when you do that, contacting a referral is still an approach. And when you log a referral as an approach, as a DM contact and as a DMP, those ratios are going to be more effective than cold calling, right? So logging that referral activity the same way you would cold calling activity is going to give you a true picture of your ratios, and it'll be accounted for when they're all in there together. So the bottom line there is referrals will improve the ratios if they're logged correctly with the associated activities. Okay, now we can move forward. Here's an example on the next set of bullet points here. Here's an example we can all walk through together. Okay, this is your screenshot if you want one. There will be a worksheet that has the calculations or has everything we need that'll follow this meeting at some point today, but you don't have to wait for it. You can just take a screenshot here. So let's back up. We needed to figure out how much activity we needed for new accounts. All right, so we took our first quarter quota and we subtracted what we expected from existing accounts, and that gave us a total of new account premium needed. That was step one. Then we went back and we looked at, well, how much does the average new account bring us? How much AP is generated in a new account? So we took the total amount needed from new accounts, we divided by the average new account enrollment, that gave us a total number. Here's how many accounts that we need. That's where our ratios come into play to help us figure out what the activity is. So in this example, let's say that this hypothetical district determined that they needed 15 new accounts. All right, so 15 new accounts multiplied by our DMP to schedule enrollments ratio, that tells us we need to run 71 decision maker presentations, or 6 per week if we're talking about a quarter. 6 per week, all right? So we took 71 decision maker presentations, and we multiplied with that by our DM contact to DMP ratio, which is 4.86 in this example. And that told us we need 345 DM contacts. That's, I guess, interesting to know, but it's just an intermediate step in this case. So 345 decision maker contacts multiplied by our approach to contact ratio of 4.75 tells us we need 1,639 approaches, or or 126 per week. All right, so we started with not knowing anything about what the first quarter looks like. We worked our way towards knowing how much premium we needed from new accounts. We translated that into what new account activity we need, and now we have an answer. So in this case, for this hypothetical district, we need to run 6 DMPs per week, and our team better be making 126 approaches per week, assuming that those are our ratios. If those are not our ratios, those numbers will be different. Okay, so screenshot if you need to. Now let's move on to our next bucket. The final bucket, NASB, New Agent Success Bonus. Look at a few bullet points here. Let's define New Agent Success Bonus first of all. This is compensation for you for each super fast start through All-Star qualifier. Okay, there is a bonus, there is an amount paid, there's compensation when somebody on your team qualifies for those awards, super fast start through All-Star, on the AP side. And then once they qualify for the AP side, if they also hit the new account qualification, there is another bonus paid. We probably should point out that the amounts for the new account qualification side are significantly higher than qualification on AP only. So again, this is where our buckets are overlapping a little bit. New accounts count for quite a bit. All right, moving forward. Here's the business takeaway here. First of all, you have a pretty good idea if you'll be on your team in the first quarter. Know who can qualify for which award. Know what the bonus amounts are for you and also for them, because those will be different amounts, which is different from the past. Spoiler alert, they're more for you. Okay? So NASB, specifically the awards achieved with new account qualifications, they play a huge role in DSC compensation. You've probably seen the bonus structure for 2021 at this point, and you understand the impact of NASB. Another way to look at it is help just 3 associates on your team achieve super fast start through All-Star. Do that over the course of a year, and you've already exceeded the individual national median income, just in NASB bonus. This process of helping an associate set goals that result in achieving these awards is critically important to your profitability. It's so critical, in fact, those steps get their own segment, and you also get a much better market trainer to guide you through them. Jolyn Mack of Team Dakota is going to take over here in just a moment and show us how this goes far beyond just achieving Triple Crown and those series awards. It's about leadership at that point. So let's recap. Let's go back to the buckets. Before we hear from Jolyn, let's recap where we've been. We built a team that will exceed our quota through understanding the importance of average weekly producer growth. And we looked at it in terms of a football analogy, so let's stick with that. Once we have that figured out, now that we have the players, we can start calling our running plays. That's our existing account premium systems. Those are the plays that look like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're very dependable, very reliable. That's EAP. And if EAP is a running game, establishing those systems allow us to open up our passing game. Those are our new account plays. And once that team is on the field and we're calling the right plays, getting to the end zone will look a lot like NASB for everyone involved. Everyone, please welcome market trainer Jolyn Mack of Team Dakota.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Ryan definitely is our territory owl, and he can pick numbers apart like none other. So thank you very much, Ryan. As he said, I'm Jolyn Mack, and I'm the market trainer for North Dakota, South Dakota, better known as Team Dakota. And I've been with Aflac for 19 years, having 4 years of agent experience, 6 years of DSD experience, and I'm in my 10th year as a market trainer. Of course, this has been my favorite position. I want to go back to the first days as a DSD for myself. It was a scary time. I didn't have the opportunity for DSD onboarding and I had no idea what was expected of me. I was told I would just need to keep doing what I had been doing and take someone with me. My RSC assured me he was going to find me new people. Well, that's not exactly how it all went. So I'm very excited about what Ryan has shared with you to help you understand how you can be more profitable and what you need to focus on. And tying back to that, your buckets of profitability that you need to focus on are NASB, new account, EAP, and annual AP or quota. So keep in mind, you will not be able to achieve all of these buckets alone. Maybe initially if you're a scratch district, but you eventually will outgrow that role for yourself. You're now in a leadership role. You're now responsible for developing people. With these responsibilities comes great reward, but there will also be challenges. It will take the efforts of your team, which will include veteran associates, new associates, and yourself. Remember, Ryan mentioned in his football game analogy that you don't want to run every play in the game. So you might say, where do I start? What does that planning look like? What do I need to focus on to fill each of those buckets? You need to start by identifying your goals as a leader. After you've done that, you need to have expectations of yourself. When you have a plan of where you're going and how you'll get there, people will follow you. I spend time myself with leadership development, and that includes listening to podcasts. It's easy because I can do it in the morning while I'm getting ready for work. One of my recent favorites is John Maxwell and the 3 dimensions of expectation. The first dimension is the expectations we have of ourselves. And this is the first and highest expectation before you can look at others. The greatest leadership challenge is leading yourself. First, we must lead ourselves well. After all, if we don't have the discipline and structure to lead ourselves, how can we begin to lead others? So we must also expect more of ourselves than we do of others. If we're not willing to do what we ask of them, they will not be willing to follow you. The second dimension is the dimension of expectations that others will have of you. Ask yourself, do you have credibility and moral authority? The definition of moral authority is the quality or characteristic of being respected for having good character. Quite simply, you can maintain or build both of these by being a good example for others to follow. Your people will learn more from your actions than from any words you can speak to them. Remember, they're always watching. Sometimes you'll question if they're listening, kind of like your kids. There are 3 questions that they will always ask. The first one is, do you love me as my leader? You have to show that you care more. This is one of the key points in performance coaching that you'll learn more about as your DSC onboarding training continues. So the first one is, do you love them? Do you show them that you care more? The second is, can you help me? Can you lead me? Do I get the answers for the questions my people have of me, which will help them learn more? And the third is, can I trust you? When I'm working with someone, do I lift them up and am I willing to do more for them? So remember that. They're expecting you to care more, learn more, and do more. Do you love them? Can you help them? And can they trust you? You're now responsible for building your team culture. Remember, your team cannot lead themselves. That's why we have the DSC position. it's important to remind you that you will build credibility and moral authority by building trust and providing value to them. Now, the third dimension John mentions is the expectations we have of others. People will live up to the expectations you have of them. They don't want to let people down that believe in them. So as you're setting expectations, there's three things you really need to focus on. The first one is that your expectations must be crystal clear. After you've set any expectations, there should be no question where they go from there. The second focus is that expectations determine our effort. So what I expect in you determines what effort I will give you. If I don't have high expectations of someone, I'll give them effort to match the expectation. So let me give you an example of that, kind of deep. I sit in an interview with a candidate. I like him. He's okay. He dresses nice. I think I could ride in the car with him for a few days. So we decide to give him a shot. Before he starts, you label him a 4 out of a scale of 1 to 10. I'm willing to take him with me. Now, as you do that, remember, every member on your team deserves your very best. Consider this. People are developed the same way gold is mined. I didn't come up with this on my own. This came from John. Gold is mined by moving several tons of dirt, one scoop at a time, just to find 1 ounce of gold. That's a lot of dirt. There's no shortcuts for this, and it's not easy. It's kind of similar to building an Aflac business. Sometimes we've got to mine through many prospects or policyholders or agents to get to the gold. A gold prospector's attitude is that there's always gold in the tons of dirt. We have to have that same determination and persistence to stick with it and mine the gold to find those awesome team members. Now, the third focus is that expectation also determines the response of others. So what I expect from you is how you'll respond to me. Now, an example of this is I'm sitting in on another interview, and this candidate is a rock star. I love everything about him. I can't wait to get him in the chair in my office as soon as possible. I've decided he's a 10 of 10, and he's my next rock star. I'm going to give him 110% from the very beginning. That's what he is going to sense, and he is going to want to achieve that expectation I have of him. Another thing to always remember is that high achievement always takes place in the framework of high expectations. So take some time to think about this. How do we determine what our expectations are of each of our agents, both veteran and new? And how do we communicate to our agents what's expected of them? In a little bit, we'll hear from DSC Mallory Britton to share with you some of her secrets in respect to how she addresses some of those things. Now, we have to start determining our expectations of our people by learning their personal and business goals. It's a helpful practice to have each agent write down their 3-month, 6-month, 12-month, and 5-year personal and business goals. Remember, do it for your new agents and your veteran agents. People will work harder for what they want to achieve than they will for someone else's goals. So learning their goals as a leader will help you understand and know what motivates them. It'll also help you determine what type of bird they are. This might be a surprise to some of you, but remember, Not everyone is the same as you. You can't motivate them, inspire them, and train everyone the same way. Hence the 4 different bird types. So after you know what their goals are, you want to help them understand how they can achieve them. You do that by showing them what's expected of them. Ryan shared how you can calculate your expectations in the 4 buckets of profitability as a DSC. We can't get to those goals very easily without the help of our agents. So I want to share with you a calculator that we use in Team Dakota to figure your agent's activity needed to help them hit the income goal that will help them be successful. So I am going to share that calculator with you. As soon as I get the technical side of things here. There we go. So this Excel spreadsheet has 2 tabs, and this will be shared with you. The first tab is the Input tab. The Input tab just allows you to enter the agent's name, their annual income needed, and then their anticipated annual EAP if they're a veteran. So that's all you enter in the Input tab. Then you go to the second tab, which is the Production Plan, and there's a couple of different elements that exist here. In the gray box, you'll see the averages. And the averages that are entered here were calculated from the results of Team Dakota. So yours will look a little bit different. But we consider that every agent's going to end up taking at least 2 weeks a year off. So they're averaging 50 working weeks a year. We're taking a 35% net commission rate on average. And in each new account they open, we average $6,600 of premium. On average, there are 10 employees in each of those accounts. And as a new agent, they average about $650 per sale. Now, when you're talking to a veteran, that is definitely going to increase. The closing ratio average for a new agent is 65% for an employee sale, and they sell to about 1 out of every 1.5 out of every 10 people they see. No, that's not right. They sell to every 1.5 person. The DM closing ratio is 25%, which means they're going to visit conduct 4 DM presentations to open 1 account. The DM kept ratio is simply saying that 7 out of 10 DMs they meet with actually sit down with them. And the DM appointment presentation is at 1.3. So knowing those numbers, I'm not as good at breaking it all down like Ryan did, so I need a calculator for it. So you'll see over here, it pulled in the information from the input page, and it's got Julia Rockstar on there. She wants an annual income of $50,000, which means she needs to generate $1,000 of income per week, or $35.71 per month. She doesn't have any EAP because she's a new agent. So the production she needs, or the AP she needs to process to get that $50,000 annual income, is $238,175, or $47.64 per week. You'll most likely use the monthly number in your MIPS sessions or your monthly planning sessions. So annually, Julia needs to open 36 new accounts, considering none of it is coming from existing accounts, and she'll average 1 new account per week, or 3 per month. So getting down into the daily expectation, it's very, very important that we break this down and they know what these numbers are. Now, as a new agent, if I look at a number of 577 DM contacts, that gives me a little bit of anxiety because that number's huge. So we want to focus on the weekly number because that's much more attainable and it's not quite so scary. So when you look at that, Julia needs to make 12 DM contacts per week. She needs to set 4 DM appointments. She needs to conduct 3 DM presentations to get 1 new account. And when she gets into those accounts, she is going to see 7 people each week and write 5 of them to achieve her goals that will obtain her $50,000 annual income for her. So that is a real easy way to sit down, show your agents exactly what they need to do to get where they need to be. And you can just go in and create one of these for each of your agents on your team, and the veterans will appreciate it as well. So take the time at the beginning of the year and walk through not only the goal setting with your agents, but also the actual planning so you know what their activity numbers will look like. So next, I promised you that we will have a guest join us, and that guest is Mallory Britton. Now, Mallory is a DSC in the great state of North Dakota, and she resides in Grand Forks. Mallory's been with us since September of 2016. We chose Mallory to be a part of this call today because of her consistent success in all the key buckets of profitability as a DSC. She's not training the masses. If any of you have been to North Dakota, there's not a lot of people there. So she focuses on developing quality people and she gives each and every one of them her very best. Mallory achieved 7 of 11 FAME qualifications, with the most recent one being Q3 of 2020, amidst all the chaos we're living through right now. We're anxious to hear how she continues to do this day in and day out. So Mallory, thank you for being on the call and welcome.
Jolynn, thank you for having me. I just want to point out that it was 100% of FAME in Q3. So very proud of what we did in Q3 with my team.
Likewise. Way to go, Mallory. Now, I just want to ask you a few questions so the DSCs on the call can learn a little bit more about your experiences, and you can share some of your best advice with them as they set up their team for 2021. So as I mentioned earlier, when you have a plan of where you're going and how you'll get there, people will follow you. That means you have expectations for not only your new and veteran associates, but for yourself too. So share with us what expectations you have set for yourself as a DSC.
Well, it's about transparency, and I run my business as if I am at an 8 to 5 job. When I'm with associates, new or veterans, I'm always trying to model the correct process, whether that's looking for referrals or nominations, making sure that I'm presenting myself the best that I can so that they can be the best that they can be. And then staying positive in the situations, not talking negative or down to anybody or letting them know any kind of stressors or challenges that I'm facing is something that is really important because those people pick up on it. And like you had mentioned earlier in your segment, everyone is watching.
Absolutely. Now, Mallory, you mentioned nominations. How many of your recruits are nominations, and how do you get your team bought into finding nominations as well?
Something that is very exciting on my team is that everyone currently has come from a nomination. So whether that's my personal nomination or if it's been from someone on my team, I strongly encourage DSCs to train from the beginning. Let them know that Nominating it starts with you, and that you always want to start early. My veterans, they like working with other people, and so they have that investment in finding a nomination to work with that they like. They then get that ABC override. So they have similar personalities that they love working with each other, and it makes it more fun.
Definitely. So tell us where you're finding your nominations, and are there some characteristics that you're watching for in a good candidate?
Yeah, so we do have a nomination day, and it's not every week, but usually once a month we have a focus of finding a new nomination. Now, there's no limit on how many they can find, but everyone's is very competitive, and if we just throw out a friendly little contest, it's not contested anymore, but we're looking for someone that's hardworking. We obviously want them to be compassionate and mindful of others. Self-motivated is huge, and to have a positive attitude. There's nothing worse than having a Cancer on a team because it brings down everybody's morale. And then you want to find somebody that's going to work harder for themselves than anyone else.
Absolutely. So where specifically are you finding some of these nominations?
So my team and I go out to lunch quite often. So we're always kind of fighting over who's going to nominate what server, or when I'm at the grocery store, if I find one of those characteristics in an employee, I always ask them if they're looking for a career change, because you just never know. They could be going through something, or they could hate their job, and they want to feel more respected. And so I always look, and I try to model that when I'm with my team, no matter where we're at, is trying to find nominations, and it gets to be pretty fun.
Absolutely. Sounds like it. So, Mallory, after one of those good candidates joins your team, tell us what the new agent onboarding process looks like.
So our onboarding process is very simple. It happens, with every new agent that we bring on, is once they've passed their test, and we've found in North Dakota that a little loophole so we can get them started a little bit faster. So that's exciting. But once they pass their test, the first thing they do is they are completing the moving forward with AFLAC. So they're getting that access to Academy Connect, and they're completing, those courses or those things on their checklist before they are appointed with AFLAC. Because as soon as their writing number comes back, we are in the field. We are hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder, and it doesn't matter what I have planned that day. Obviously I'm not for sure when they're going to get their writing number, so I have to have my day filled up. But they're with me that first day. They're seeing how I interact with other associates, how I interact with new accounts, how I interact with my existing accounts. But then I also schedule at least a 2-week calendar with them so they know where they're going, what they're doing for that day, and setting those expectations again from the beginning. And we're fitting in prospecting. We're fitting in any kind of appointments that we need to run. And it's super crucial to have them be income within the first 10 days. And so those are goals as well.
Wonderful. So you've walked through that new agent onboarding information. How do you communicate clear expectations with that new agent from the very start?
So during the onboarding, we have an onboarding guide, and I use that. They get a copy of it, and we walk through it from front to back. And what that looks like is It's bringing up some of those more common conversations or those common sense expectations or those uncomfortable ones from the beginning, so that you're not making it directed at them, but you're also bringing it to their attention. It seems to be a little bit more receptive. And then we set any kind of expectations for what, I'm going to work just as hard as you are, but I need you to work right alongside with me and put in the same amount of effort.
Absolutely. So you spend time, back to Ryan's football analogy, you spend time letting your agents know what the rules of the game are before the game ever starts.
Right.
And I'm sure you've had situations where you've had those hard business conversations. Does that help spelling out the expectations before they start, before a challenge occurs, having shared that with them early on?
For sure. And it takes away a lot of the stress on my end too, because nobody likes to have those uncomfortable conversations, especially after you've been with them and you've put in the time and effort to train them. And so it relieves a lot of the stress as a DSC to set those early and you stand by them, because you're also gaining the credibility with the rest of your team and growing the culture and making sure that they have your back, you're trustworthy. It just creates a more positive outlook on the team.
Definitely. So why is it important for you to know the personal and business goals of your new agents and your veteran agents? Or let's just talk new agents right now. And how do you keep their goals in front of them?
So by setting those personal and business goals, it keeps the conversation about them. And like you had mentioned earlier, like they're going to work harder for themselves for their goals and not my goals. And so if I know said person is going to reach this amount of AP and this amount of new accounts, do I need to fill up my bucket with more new people that quarter? Or what does that look like? Doing the math, as Ryan had said earlier, and filling in where needed. But it creates their buy-in and it boosts their culture. I do a monthly income planning each month with each associate, and that's when we review their quarterly goals. And so we have them write down 3 personal, 3 business, and it helps me coach them on a weekly platform so that they are constantly knowing that I'm there for them and it's about their goals and not mine.
So you start with their annual goals, you break it down quarterly for yourself, and then monthly for each new and veteran agent, and then that also translates into a weekly conversation, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So what does your new associate coaching cadence look like?
So with my new associates, they are invited to do a coaching call with me every week. It's usually on a Monday afternoon, but they know that they have that time with me, and they have questions, or if they don't know where to go or they're having issues, we can kind of strategize through that coaching call, and then have them walk me through their week, what their goal is for, in an open enrollment, if they have a new account, if they're servicing, prospecting, whatever the case may be. But then I also do a follow-up on Wednesdays, and we do a recap. So usually, and everyone knows this, Monday and Tuesday comes and your week can completely change. So by Wednesday, it's refocus. Let's make sure that we're heading in the right direction and looking at those buckets that, associates have as well. They want the income. They want to build and grow their business. And so making sure that we can all work towards the same goal.
Mallory, you're the only one that has a weekly calendar planned out that doesn't go as expected.
I know.
Just kidding. So, what part of the Triple Crown series with new account bonus plays into a new agent's goals and expectations?
Well, it's a very large part of it. Honestly, I think it's one of the main reasons that, we get new agents to come on board. Everyone's motivated by money, and the new account side of it is insane. If you can do that within your first year, better watch out. It's going to be pretty intense watching you grow. But we also have a scorecard that goes out for the associates, and it tells them where they're at in their series. So if they're $10,000 away from hitting that next bonus, making sure that we are pushing or encouraging them as much to get to that next goal. And if I can help them, that's money in my pocket as well as theirs. But then you're also having that relationship, and you're building and growing your team, and that culture is huge and important in Team Dakota. So I talk about it a lot.
Well, if you help enough people accomplish their goals, yours just naturally are taken care of. Wouldn't you agree from your experience?
Oh, for sure. If their goals are met, then my goals are.
And as they meet the different levels of the Triple Crown series with the new accounts, what does that do for your retention of those agents?
It ensures that they'll be here the next year or the next quarter, and they'll want to keep going and hitting any kind of new bonus or any kind of contest that comes out. It makes it that much more fun.
Absolutely agreed. And in the process of learning your agent's goals, maybe they don't specifically say they're driven by money, but maybe it's a family trip that they want to take at the end of the year. So how do you keep that type of goal in front of them when we typically are talking about dollars?
So you can always relate it into, okay, this is going to be, a fridge or a new roof or, everything has a value. And so you kind of spin it into what their goal is, and making sure that, they're bought in.
Absolutely. You put a dollar amount on that fridge, and that's what those monies are allotted to. So, yeah, so exciting. You're right. I once said, you'll know I made it big with Aflac when I have a fridge with an ice maker. So my neighbors come over, they've all heard that, and they laugh about it because I have a fridge with an ice maker. So what are the most important training techniques you use to develop a self-sufficient, confident, and competent new associate in opening new accounts?
Well, it starts with obviously the onboarding process, and once we get through every role-playing situation, it blows my mind how many people aren't with their new people when they're opening their first new account. So making sure that you're with them and you're showing them how to take the next steps, and to then have them step in and take a little bit off your plate. So then it's a 50-50 kind of relationship when you go into that second account. And then as soon as they get more comfortable, obviously you're just going to hand over the reins, sit back and watch them. And then after the fact, you're going to do a kind of a recap, and you want to make sure that, this is what you did well, this is what we should focus on, and here's where we can improve it. So you're always having that conversation going in to opening a new account or heck, anything that comes with Aflac, you always want to make sure that you're on the same page. But being with them and showing them the first time, backing off, letting them show you. And heck, I've learned so much just by being with an agent for a week.
Absolutely. Different skills and techniques, and we always can learn from other people. So great job there, Mallory. And is it fair to say that you deliver that training more in a bite-sized piece rather than maybe expecting them to learn the whole DM presentation at once?
Yeah, so just like the number of DM contacts that one has to make when you showed that number, it looks like a lot at first, but if you break that down into like a weekly or even a daily, you're more ease into the situation. So taking a chunk of our business, whether it's part of the DM presentation, taking a few slides, getting good at it, and then the next time, moving on to the next couple slides, or even, learning the brochures, taking a few of those at a time and really making sure that you're good at a few to then move on to get better and grow and learn more is less stressful. Again, I mean, who doesn't want less stress?
You don't want them to be completely overwhelmed, right?
No.
So, in your experience, what are the most common struggles for new associates in the new account activity skill set, and how do you hold them accountable?
Prospecting. It is never come up with an associate that I don't like prospecting, but it gets easier the more that you do it, obviously. And now I have veterans that are like, that's the best part of my job. I love prospecting. I love talking to them. So as a new agent, they're always going to have those concerns with going out and talking to people. But what we do is, again, with our coaching calls, new associates are responsible for filling out their activity in CCLM. And then that way I can go in and, hold them accountable, have those conversations, tie it back to their goals. And then we're coaching on a fact and not just feelings, which again makes a DSC more credible.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about the new agent, but it's also important as a leader that you know your veterans' goals. What expectations do you have of your veterans, and how do you help them reach their goals?
Well, it's pretty similar because as a new agent, they're looking at the Triple Crown Series. As a veteran agent, my team is very competitive again, and they like the, whatever contest they can win or bonus money. So VIP has been a focus, but also, we are always tying that back to a personal goal. And when my team, we have a newsletter that comes out and they always want to see their name at the top of the leaderboard. It's a recognition thing, and we celebrate every positive thing on the team, whether it's a negative Corona test, if it's I got a nomination, I opened up a new account. And so I feel like there's really no harsh line between my veterans and my new agents because we're all treated equally.
Awesome. So when do you have the VIP conversations with your veterans? Are they bought into the VIP?
My team is bought into the VIP. The ones that are on that track are 100% bought in. We get like I said, that scorecard, and it shows them where they're at, what they have left to achieve it, and then a potential bonus. But we talk about that on our weekly coaching, and it's really fun to see them interact with each other, because if this person's got 3 new accounts lined up and the other one doesn't, they'll work together to help each other reach those goals. And so we've just created a really positive teamwork on our district.
Awesome. So, what is the coaching cadence for a veteran, and what impact does that have on them staying on track with their goals?
It's pretty similar. Like I said, do all my coaching the same. The conversations are just slightly different when it comes to making them think that they're in the driver's seat, because when they think that it's their idea, they run with it and they like to prove me wrong. So finding those little tweaks have been very helpful when we have very dominant veteran associates.
Nice way to say that. Definitely. So the coaching conversations occur a little bit differently for your veterans versus your new agents, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. The Wi-Fi at my office decided that it didn't like me, so I'm sorry I'm a white blob in the corner of your screen. Now, you've been a DSC for about 3 years now. We've identified the 4 buckets of profitability as NASB, new accounts, EAP, and annual quota. And as I mentioned earlier, you've achieved 7 out of 11 quarters of fame, which is remarkable. What do you think contributes to that consistency quarter after quarter?
Our culture, just making sure that, people are positive, that people are attracted to others that are winning and that are happy, and they want to be a part of something, of the winning culture and the positive attitudes. They want to do it for themselves. And I think that it makes it a heck of a lot more fun when we can, celebrate those big wins together. And they always say, oh, the district did this or that. And I'm like, no, you guys did this. And so it just makes my job a heck of a lot easier. And we're like family. We go to lunch. We have Snapchat groups, and we use those filters. And there's an Aflac one now, so that's fun. But yeah, culture and keeping a positive outlook, and winner's gonna win.
Awesome. So, in closing, we've talked about the 4 buckets of profitability being the focus for success. There are many other tasks that also need to be taken care of in the day of a DSC. What is your best advice from your experience for keeping the right priorities in your green light time?
Well, you mean I have to do more than just coach people?
Yeah.
No, so like you mentioned, there's those 4 buckets of profitability, and those are the main reasons I get a paycheck. So whatever I'm doing during the hours of 8 to 5, if it doesn't fit into one of those 4 buckets, I need to do that during a red light time. It's as simple as that. Building and growing your team only comes with hustle and focus.
Absolutely. And, that's one thing each and every one of us is challenged with, no matter what position we hold in the world of Aflac. So that is great advice, Mallory. As you mentioned, the 4 buckets of profitability are the core reason you get a paycheck. So again, if you're struggling with what fits into a certain time of day, keep in mind that when you look at it, it needs to fall into one of those 4 buckets if it's happening basically from 8 to 5. Mallory also talked a lot about her culture on her team and how important that is, and she's really the leader of culture for her team. So another great bit of advice. Mallory, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. We really appreciate it. And next, you'll get to hear from Monica White to talk a little bit more about how you can manage your time that will now be focused in the DSC position. But before we do that, we are going to take a break, and we will come back at 10:45. So you've got about a 15-minute break. Thank you, everyone, and see you back here at 10:45.
All right, everybody, welcome back from break. Hope everybody had a chance to stretch those legs, grab a snack, maybe even a beverage. Not that kind of beverage, it is not noon yet. But I am Monica White, and I am excited to bring us home for the second half of this morning's conversation on business planning, profitability, time management. So thank you for sticking with us. I know we've got a few people jumping back in, so welcome back. My name again is Monica White. I'm the market trainer of Nebraska. I'm just wrapping up my third year here in this role. Now, I've actually been with Aflac for not as long as Jolynn and Ryan, but 13 years. And like everybody else here, I started off as an associate and then got into the management training program, that great CIT program that we have. That moved into a DSC role, and it was actually at that time that I moved over to the Iowa team. So hello to those Iowa peeps out there. I moved into the Iowa team as a market trainer, as a DSC, and then from there I went to an RSC role and an MAA role. And so here we are today, back in Nebraska as the market trainer, and I couldn't be happier in this role. As Jolynn said, it is definitely one of my favorites. So I do want to say that if I had had the information that Jolynn and Ryan and Mallory shared when I first started as a DSC, man, it would have been so much easier. I had no idea back in 2010 what my expectations were. I didn't even know where to begin. And so all I did was just take advantage of what I knew needed to be done. I knew we needed to get out there and have activity. I knew I needed to be organized and take action. But if I had known the details behind what Ryan shared with those buckets of profitability, knowing where I needed to focus the majority of my time, that would have been absolutely amazing. To know that I could have done a better job of setting goals and expectations, not just for my team, but also for myself, as Jolynn shared, that would have been incredible. And Mallory's message on having that nominating culture and building a team with culture and structure, that would have changed everything. Now, I did have a great run, and I'm still proud of where I've come. But man, I am so excited to see your guys' names on the top of the leaderboard, not just in the Central Territory, but across our whole country. And so I took a ton of notes this morning. I hope you have too. And this leads us now to our next topic. So let me share my screen with you here. All right. So hopefully you guys can see my PowerPoint. I am stuck on this page, so give me 1 second. I am trying to move it. There we go. All right. So we are going, over the next maybe 35 to 45 minutes, we are going to spend some time together, and our next topic is time management. What we're going to do is we're going to break this down to identify some of those DSC responsibilities that we now have on our plate. And not only are we going to identify those responsibilities, but we're going to take some time to really identify where our areas of focus need to be. We're going to talk about planning through calendaring and the cadence of what that looks like. We're also going to identify where to start, right? That's the key right now. It's just, where do I start? And I'm so excited about the guest that is going to be joining me towards the end of our segment. Most of you from Missouri East already know him. And now, of course, our Dallas market is very blessed to have him on their team. So Logan Cheeto will be joining us in just a little bit. So with that being said, all of this is going to help us tie this into our number one job as a DSC. And guys, that is to build associates, to help develop associates. So being a strong leader, one that others want to emulate and follow, as Jolynn was sharing with us, it all starts with being other-centered. It all begins with servant leadership. Now, on the surface, that sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? However, nothing worth doing can possibly be that easy. So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, grab a pen and a couple sheets of paper. We're going to do some exercises over the next few minutes. All right. So grab that pen, get a piece of paper out, and through this next exercise, I am going to set my timer for 45 seconds. Now, in this 45 seconds, I would like you to jot down as many responsibilities as you can possibly think of that a DSC has. So I am setting my timer now. Ready? Begin. Ten seconds left. 3, 2, 1, stop. All right. Now, my guess is that 45 seconds was not quite enough time. But since this segment is on time management, we are going to keep moving on, okay? So as you've seen for yourself on the list you just started to create, a DSC has to balance a ton, from new associate onboarding to driving activity to performance coaching and to continuing to grow that book of business through referrals. Those are just a few of the things you do. So how do you even begin to organize all of this? Well, the good news, guys, is it's simple. We just need to do two things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to determine where we get the most lift, right? Where do we find profitability for our teams? And then, of course, by cause and effect, as Mallory talked about, for us as DSCs. What activities are going to drive profitability based on those 4 buckets we learned about from Ryan, right? And those 4 buckets, AP, EAP, new accounts, and of course, NASB. So what I want to do is I'm going to add another 45 seconds to my clock. And I want you to take a look at that list you just created. And I know you can expand on that list. If you think of other things, go ahead and add them. But I want you to circle. We're going to take 45 minutes, and I want you to circle the things that are going to help you drive results. Only the things that will drive results. Okay? 45 seconds starts now. About 15 seconds. Four, 3, 2, 1, stop. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that second exercise may not have taken us that full 45 seconds as did the first. See, it's important to recognize that those non-circled items, they are still responsibilities that we have to follow through with. They are just not the responsibilities which we want or need to spend the majority of our time. So you may have noticed that the information that Ryan, Joe, and Mallory shared earlier this morning, it was pertinent in helping us identify with our new commission structure and our compensation structure, these metrics, and therefore the activities upon which we need to focus. And that's what's going to help our associates get to the end results that drive their financial success. So before we circled those movers and shakers in our second exercise, I mentioned that we need to do 2 things, right? Okay, so we just did the first one. We identified where we get that lift. Now we need to make sure that we calendar the necessary activity and communication that helps us lead, coordinate, and coach our teams. So not only do we need to make sure that everything is calendared, but we also have to make sure that ample time is allotted for the most important aspects of our business. Otherwise, it's well known that our time is going to be, frankly, attacked and decimated by that whirlwind. So the second thing we do then is we create our calendar, or our plan, I should say, through calendaring. Okay? So, sorry, having screen issues there. Now, I love Stephen Covey, and I love how he paints this picture for us. Now, if you haven't had an opportunity to read yet the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's definitely worth your time. And in fact, the first 3 habits that he discusses in that book, it epitomizes the importance of owning your calendar. Now, those first 3 habits are 1, being proactive. Now, if we don't have a clear picture for ourselves of what we need to focus our time on, we end up becoming very reactive. And our reactive time gets sucked up by that whirlwind, right? So being proactive is one of the first things that calendar allows us to do. Another thing that the calendar allows us to do is begin with the end in mind. Like Jolynn talked about, when we have our goals in mind, when we have our expectations already set, right? Like Ryan talked about, when we know what we need to do, we can calendar in all of the planning and activity that has to occur to get us there. And then it allows us to, 3, put first things first. By putting first things first, we get to focus on what's important. So let's now dive into that calendaring aspect of time management. So again, I want you to grab that pen and paper, and I would like you to grab a clean piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, jot down these 4 columns that you see on your screen: daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. Now, I'd also like for you to either refer to the list that you just created and circled, or in some cases, maybe you have a great to-do list in your planner, or your whether that's on paper or on your phone, right? Either way is fine. It doesn't matter. So if you're using your calendar, jump back to January 2020. That was the beginning of our last, what we'll call normal quarter, right? This pandemic has definitely changed things for us. If you're using the list you just created, that's fine too. Now, I am going to put 90 seconds on my timer this time, 90. And I want you to go through that list, go through your calendar, go through the things that you know a DSC needs to do on a regular basis. And I want you to categorize those. So actually write them onto the piece of paper that has the columns. Write down the events and tasks that you are going to have to carry on as a DSC. All right? 90 seconds. Ready, set, go. We are about halfway there at 45 seconds. Fifteen seconds left. All right, go ahead and put those pens down, guys. So you are likely catching on to this, but what we're doing is we are preparing for you to create your DSC box calendar. It's that recurring schedule that provides you with the necessary structure. I love that word, structure, that you need as a leader. So we know that every organization across AFLAC is different. No 2 district teams are alike. So what I did is I put together my own example of how I categorize some of my different tasks and events back when I was a DSC and even an RSC. So let me share with you what some of those columns included. So for me, communication makes the top of the list. It makes the top of every list. But on a daily basis, I wanted to make sure that I communicated with my team, at least as a group, to make sure that they received all of the information that was important for them. I also, with my newest associates, of course, communicated with them on a daily basis. And then, of course, we have field time. If we don't get out there and make it happen and drive activity for new accounts, drive re-DMs and servicing for our existing accounts, we know we're not going to be successful in our role. New associate onboarding, which we are going to discuss in greater detail as we move forward with our level up training, that's something that belongs on the daily column. And then we have those administrative tasks. They're not necessarily fun, but we know that we still need to do things with CCLM. We still need to take care of claims and billing issues. We have voicemails and emails to respond to. All of those get lumped into that category. Now, on a weekly basis, there's still communication that takes place, and some of you might have vets on your team. Now, not every veteran wants a daily phone call from every single district, right? And so at a bare minimum, I would communicate with my veterans on a weekly basis. You may have brokers that you are building relationships with. You may do a newsletter of sorts. Maybe that's through Spark, for example, for your team. And then, of course, we get into coaching. We have structured coaching conversations with each of our associates on a weekly basis. And we may call those CDIs or WIPs, and there's plenty of other names for those. But those need to be on the calendar. And don't forget your own coaching with your RSC. We also have those Monday morning meetings, which you're now responsible for. And then there's trainings that are going to take place. Maybe your region or your market does those on a weekly basis. Maybe it's on a monthly basis. We still have those administrative tasks as well that fall into that weekly column, such as checking out RPM. Maybe it's looking at that SAT dashboard. Now, of course, those things are probably going to happen more than just once a week, but they might not actually be daily. Now, monthly, we could have trainings that occur on a monthly basis. And we can't forget our coaching on a monthly basis with our associates through our regional teams and then with the market office president. And those are MIPS, right? We've got our MIPS. We can't forget those. You as a DSC, you might have training with your market office. Maybe you have a regular call with your MAA or maybe your trainer. And guys, we are going to have sustainment for you as newer DSCs. And so that is going to be on, depending on your market, a monthly basis, for example. You want to make sure that's in the calendar and you make that a priority because that's how you can grow your skill set and work with your peers. On a quarterly basis, this is really what's going to help support what Ryan was talking about. We've got to make sure we know where we're at, we know what our goals are, and we know what we need to do to not only meet those goals, but exceed them. So we've got to look at those deadlines that we've got to incorporate. Maybe that's setting a certain amount of DMs by a specific date in the quarter to make sure you hit your new account target. Maybe it's making sure that your re-DMs are scheduled by the 15th of every month for your upcoming 60-day enrollment. There's PACE activities that we can go ahead and calendar in. We don't want to forget about Power Weeks, especially third quarter Power Weeks in the Central Territory. And then we have things like holidays. If we don't calendar those in and understand how they are going to impact the activity of our associates and the accessibility that we have to business owners, then we're not truly prepared. And don't forget your PTO. Maybe your best associate goes and spends their summers on an alpaca farm. But we've got to make sure that we're planning accordingly, right? So some of these are standalone items, such as maybe daily emails or attending a monthly market-wide training. There's very little, if any, planning that you need to prepare for those types of events, right? Now, on the other hand, as a DSC, you are going to be the one that's planning your Monday morning meeting. That falls on you. So my question is, when do you plan on doing your planning? Now, for me, it's Sunday evenings. I've done that for years, for a dozen years plus, right? And in fact, I still, as a market trainer, and my market knows this, that's when I send out the majority of my reports. It's when I spend my time doing those red activities. Now, as a DSC, you're going to need to find time for planning, and you don't want to take away from that green time. So it's up to you. You fit that in whenever you need, but it's very important to make sure that you have that recognized. MIPS are another event that definitely require planning. If we're asking our associates to come in and spend time with us in a coaching environment, we definitely owe them the respect to spend some time preparing for that conversation. So when you do it, again, it's completely up to you. Just make sure that you create a cadence that allows you to stay really organized and prepared. So up to this point, we've taken a dive into some of the many DSC responsibilities that we've got to juggle. Now, with the help from our friends this morning, we've identified the areas on which we need to keep that really strong focus. And we've chatted through that consistent cadence by leaning on our calendar. So let's be honest. The tough part is setting aside the time to actually execute on this, right? Austin Peterson always tells us that these events are great, but if we don't plan the sustainment for these events, it's just that, it's an event. And it's up to you if you want to take action on some of the things that you've heard today. So once we close our laptops, we know we are going to get pulled into that whirlwind. Now, before we hear from our next guest, I'm going to ask you to grab that pen one more time and make note of these 4 action items, right? Number 1. Now, you may already have an idea, but thoroughly think through your team's composition and identify the activities that are going to drive results for your associates. Be very specific. What has to be accomplished on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis to create wins for your team? Second, make a very thorough list of all the events and tasks that you will do as a DSC. I know we only touched on that today. 45 seconds was not nearly enough, but you got started. So again, be very, very specific. And then now you can lump any of these together that you want, like we did with those administrative tasks, right? We threw emails, voicemails, claims, billing issues all into one category. That's fine, as long as you know what needs to get accomplished within that time slot. And then third, we need to create the cadence. So we need you to fit those items from number 2 into an actual calendar, whether it's paper or digital, it doesn't matter. Now, 2 big reminders for task number 3. Always double check to ensure that you are spending the majority of your time on the activities that are going to warrant that higher focus. So really pay attention to that. And then the other thing for number 2, is for each given activity, you have to decide, is it a standalone event that can be scheduled by itself, or is it something that requires some form of prep, like making sure that you meet certain deadlines, or making sure that you get communication out to certain people by X day at X time, right? And calendar those things in because it will help you control your business. Now, finally, I would like for you to take 20 seconds and pull out your calendar right now. Paper, phone, it doesn't matter. Pull that out. You've got 20 seconds and schedule in about 2 hours just to get yourself organized for your new role. Okay? It doesn't have to be this afternoon, but the sooner the better, guys. Now, we know you're juggling a ton right now. It is the 4th quarter. We're all juggling. We get it. But it's so important to make sure that you get that on your calendar. So the 4 steps in review: identify what's most important. 2, create that list so you know what needs to be calendared. And then go ahead and create that calendar, that box calendar. Use a cadence. Make sure you're checking for prep work that needs to be done, deadlines that need to be done. And hopefully by now, if not, make sure you still do it. Get yourself calendared for your own business to go ahead and start planning. Now, when we do this, all we really need to do then is execute on our calendar items. It makes things so much smoother. So one of the things that we have to remember, guys, is that we are not going to have everything perfectly set in stone right out of the gate. Your scheduling and your calendaring is absolutely going to evolve, especially in light of everything that's going on right now. So with these starting points in ink, I'm going to ask you please to set down your papers, your pens, turn off your emails for a moment, flip over your phones so they do not distract you, because we have an amazing guest who deserves our attention. And trust me, you are going to want to hear from this gentleman. So several weeks ago, Logan Cheadle, he is an outstanding DSC in the Texas-Dallas market. He was a guest on one of our Central Territory market trainer calls. And during that call, he explained to us how he is utilizing one of Aflac's new resources to help him manage his business. And so we thought it would be a fantastic opportunity to bring him into this session this morning. And so I am so excited to welcome Logan Cheadle to the conversation. Logan, we would love to hear from you.
Good morning, Monica, and good morning to the Central Territory Stars. I'm excited to be on with everybody this morning.
Logan, we are so happy to have you. So happy to have you.
Thank you.
Now, is my camera on? Because I am sorry, but I cannot tell at the moment.
I don't see
you, Logan. Is that correct? Well, I didn't mean to hide myself that whole time. That's fantastic. So, Logan, now we have this resource called RPM. You may have heard of it. And what's great about RPM is it allows us to view an array of metrics across the company. And I happen to notice that in 2019, you finished the year at, I don't want to get this wrong, 150.62% of quota. Logan, you finished at $930,000 in premium. That is no joke. So I'm sure there were multiple factors that went in there, but can you walk us through how important time management played into your success?
Yeah, of course, and I appreciate your credit there, Monica, down to the 0.62. I don't know if I would have been able to repeat that myself, but I definitely would say that time management not only played a big part, but it was probably pivotal in any success that our team may have had over this past year and years prior. And I know, like you mentioned, and many others on this call have so far, early on in my Aflac career, time management was a struggle for me, right? And I came from being a student athlete directly into this role. And as a student athlete at the school I was at, we were handed a weekly schedule, right, of where to be every second of the day from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. So definitely was something that I had to understand quickly and get better at. So I quickly realized, especially taking over as a district, that there's so many responsibilities we have, like you mentioned, and just didn't know really where I should be focusing my energy, right? So through great leadership, I would say one of the biggest determinants over this past year and a half has been, I really have to credit my RSC, Rich Westermeyer, who did exactly, Monica, what you just did for the whole Central Territory here. And that was sit me down and help me identify just the silos of this business that are going to help me drive my top priorities, my top areas of profitability. And that's really helped me to be more intentional on where I focus my time. But also I found it was really important to identify which of those activities gave me energy, right? And I know there's a lot of different DSCs and a lot of different personalities, right? So with those different activities and responsibilities we have, I found it extremely important to identify which one of these activities are energy draining to me, which ones are extremely important and give me energy. And because of that, I kind of identified a way to find support in the areas that drained energy from me, whether that be from my region, other DSC counterparts, or just trying to streamline a lot of things, right? So in understanding that information, the biggest deal is being able to identify annual goals and work them backwards. And when you can take those annual goals, break them down into quarterly, monthly, et cetera, and then you can not only do that, but then focus on the leading indicators, so the activities that'll help you achieve that end result, like your activities in the field, your DM contacts, your DM set. That really helped me control the emotional roller coaster of being a DSC, right? We'll have tough weeks that you might not open an account that week, didn't have a lot of AP, and you're like, man, I don't know if this job is for me. And then you'll have those super great weeks where you're writing 30, 40 grand, opening a few accounts. I think I found it when I really was able to focus on the leading indicators. Every week was good because I knew whether we won the week based on that, not on the end goal, right? So that was the biggest difference for me this year. I found that when I was able to focus on those leading indicators, I knew they aligned with my end goal. So it allowed me to just be more effective with my time, be more productive. And then lastly, just consistently checking my progress and reflecting on what happened that week. I allocate time on Saturday morning every week to just kind of go through the previous week, see if we won the week, and if we didn't, why. And if I did, what led to leading the week with my team. So I think you can't just go a full quarter without reflecting and seeing what worked and what didn't work.
I absolutely love that advice. It's something that's always evolving, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, right. And that never ends. That absolutely never ends. Now, you mentioned obviously that you were very intentional, and you really worked backwards from your goals, which is fantastic advice for the group. And then with those leading indicators, knowing that those were the driving factors to get you to where you wanted to be, to get you to those end goals, you were able to not just look at the lagging indicators on maybe a weekly basis to see if you would achieve those, but then also take that time to dive into the why behind it, and not wait for the end of a month or end of a quarter to start going through that why. That would obviously then give you time to make corrections. So love that piece of it. Now, on the flip side, what do you think were some of the biggest challenges that you had that might have been able to be subdued by having stronger time management in the very beginning of your career?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, I'm sure. And really, Monica, one of the main things that comes to my mind is, with all the different responsibilities and, different tasks we have as district sales coordinators, I think my biggest challenge that would have helped with a better time management early on was just losing focus again on the importance of field time with new agents, right? And I was able to identify or been told, like you, hey, just stay out in the field just as much as you have and do it with new agents, keep doing what you're doing, and that's how you're a district, right? But the reality was that we have a lot more meetings, right? I got involved in the broker channel, being a BFI, so there was this kind of dragging me this way, and it felt that when we were getting up and running and setting appointments, that the most important use of my time was running DM presentations, broker meetings, enrollments, right, and meetings like these, right? So having to constantly remind myself that between that and administrative work, it's important and you have to do it, but you have to time block first your field time with your new agents, right? No matter how big your district gets, how many different responsibilities you're handling, that's the most important part of this business. And I think I've done a better job slowly at doing that by just getting better at streamlining processes, establishing standard operating procedures that I can point people towards, administrative tasks if you're not in a position where you can hire a district admin yet, just streamline as many of those tasks as possible. And then time block. Don't let anything come in the way of your field time. Have that be the first thing on your calendar every week. And that's definitely a pitfall that I did not have, leading up into probably mid-2019.
I love that you brought that up. It is, if you haven't read The 4 Disciplines of Execution, not you, Logan, I'm sure you have, but if not, for everybody else out there, it's a fantastic book that helps you focus on what's most important to drive your business forward, including those leading indicators, and focusing the majority of your time on what matters most. You mentioned streamlining processes, and that leads me to a new resource that AFLAC has made available, and you've been given the opportunity to pilot that resource. I know we all have it now, but you've been able to use it for a little bit longer than the rest of us, and what we're talking about, guys, is Interview Stream, or IVS. And so would you please walk us through what your initial perception of this tool was?
Yeah, of course. My initial perception of the tool, Monica, was, wow, AFLAC's speed to action and bringing this virtual resource was very impressive. I thought it was really cool how fast they brought us a lot of these virtual tools. And I know, like many of us, I was using Calendly as a scheduling tool. And that's kind of a strategy that our market director, Alex Miro, brought to us back in the beginning of 2019 before the pandemic even happened. And also in Missouri East, I know a lot of the team there was using it. Meg Rod Gunther, our former market trainer, really helped me out in the use of using a scheduling tool like that and how to help it work for you. And so understanding the benefit of it, I really understood the why behind using it. So I was just excited initially that Aflac came out with a specific platform for us to use. And my initial thoughts on getting into the platform were that there's so many customizable functions in this platform and resource that allow us to really get creative. And I've heard people use the example of why they like, Android over a Apple because it lets them edit more of the settings and things like that. And to me, it's the same kind of a deal when you look at this IBS system because there's so many capabilities that we have with it. I really love the landing page feel that we're able to get from the account specific as well as the personal scheduler. I really love the ability to add external calendars and adding those external calendars not only to check your availability if you choose so, but also to when an appointment gets scheduled to send that invite automatically to external calendars as well. The ability to share cases with other agents, the invite settings, you can get really creative with how you distribute the invite to that link, the customization again of the page, the fact that it links with our WebEx accounts, and then it's Aflac branded. I think it's super important and sets us aside, gives us a more professional feel than just everybody that's using Calendly right now. And then lastly, my probably favorite, Monica, is the fact that the speed to set up on it. I know that our territory enrollment teams have been just bombarded, especially since everything's kind of been forced to go virtual with case setups on things like 8x8. Before I was able to use some of the scheduling tools that Aflac provided for accounts over a certain size. But instead of having to send in an intake form and wait, a certain amount of business days, it gives us the speed to be able to go in and just, create what we need to create kind of on a dime. So all of those different capabilities are super exciting to me. There's many more. I find out new stuff about it all the time.
I would definitely call you a SME, a subject matter expert on IVF. You know a ton about it. And, it's fun to be a part of a pilot and really get to dive into things first. But it can be also overwhelming because you don't always have a place to go to get all of the questions answered that you have. And kudos to you for really just, taking the bull by the horns and learning this system. What's exciting to me is when you were a part of our Central Territory Market Trainer call a handful of weeks ago, you really dove into something and opened my eyes to a capability within IDS that I hadn't necessarily had that same perception of. And so I want to take a moment to share that with this group. So we know that with IDS, there's two main avenues, right? There's the account scheduling side, which does have the landing page. And then there's also, I think I'm having network problems, so hopefully you guys can hear me. There's also the personal scheduler. And you did a fantastic job of explaining the difference between the two of those, Logan. Would you mind just taking a moment to explain the difference within IDS? What is the difference between, and when would you use the account scheduler versus the personal scheduler?
Yeah, of course. And it's funny you mentioned the subject matter expert, and I think that's funny only because, with it, the only reason I've had the opportunity to pilot this and the only reason that I'm pretty comfortable using it now, Monica, is just because I was one of the first people that was comfortable enough to just fail. So just get in and play around with it, and most of the things you learn through trial and error. So I encourage everybody to take time to go ahead and just dive into the system and try to use it. It can be a little frustrating at first if you're not comfortable, but you got to go ahead and try it, right? And so in terms of the differences between the personal scheduler and the account-specific scheduler, I look at it in a couple of different ways. I know the personal scheduler I use really just to help protect my biggest asset, and that's my time. So when I look at the personal scheduler, I use it for, setting meetings like DMs, re-DMs, internal meetings. I play around because I had a conversation with, one of the corporate employees prior to the time I got on the market director call, the market trainer call. And we spent about 3 back and forth emails saying, hey, These are the times I have available to connect, right? Shot back, well, hey, I'm available this time. What time zone are you in, right? Oh, I'm Central Time Zone, so an hour before, I'll call you 15 minutes before then, cool, right? So this link is just so much better to send and avoid that back and forth email for things like that. I use it too for time blocking. So I use a personal scheduler for time blocking things like claims. And I know when we're talking about our red time, yellow time, green time, our green time is the field time we need to have, running meetings, prospecting, enrolling. And so I know a lot of times when I get calls or get emails from, billing questions to claims questions, it's important to me to respond quickly to make sure that my policyholders know I'm there for them and take care of them. But also I don't want to take time away from my task at hand, right? So I created a personal scheduler event that only allows people to schedule time on Friday mornings, because that's when I do my in-office administrative work for asset management, claims, things like that. So if I get an email or a call, I shoot them a pre-made email template with that link at the bottom of it after it goes through a couple step-by-steps on filing a claim to reserve that time for them. So I'm quick to respond, not leaving them out to dry forever, but also I set the expectation that this is when I'm available for that. So just using it to time block things like that. I also use it for my Friday one-on-ones with my team, send it out so everybody has the opportunity to pick their own personal time for their Friday coaching. And then on the account specific side, use that for open enrollments and a lot of the broker interactions relationships I have. And for that, again, the why behind it is just to protect our time again. So we're not sitting in a open enrollment meeting in the conference room like everybody's been, where you just enroll an employee and you just hope that they actually go get the next person to bring them in, so you're not stuck staring at the ceiling waiting to see somebody, right? But also on the other end, for the account, they don't want to see the crowd of people sitting outside of the break room or standing outside of the break room saying, hey, I'm just waiting to see the Aflac guy next. They don't want to be off the floor either. So I think it can really help us streamline one of the biggest assets, and that's time. And I know that's one of the biggest kickbacks or rebuttals we'll get from an account, whether it be new or existing, that we don't want our people off for a long time. So use it as a tool to help show them this is how we're going to streamline open enrollment, especially from a virtual standpoint. A lot of you guys as well have done a virtual call center enrollment where you sat on 8x8 and sat on your computer waiting for inbound calls, hoping people would call in, and or doing outbound calls, hoping that they would actually pick up the 800 number and be in a position where they were ready to talk about their benefits at that time. This just helps you respect your own time in a couple of different ways. So that's kind of how I use the different silos of the IBS system.
Yeah, and that was something that was really just kind of a big wow to me when you said that. And it makes perfect sense. I just hadn't looked at it that way. And I didn't realize that capability existed. So huge out-of-the-box thinking on your part to bring that to your business. What has been the reception that you've received from, let me back up. A lot of us want to be so prompt when we respond to somebody. We want to make sure that they know we are here to help them right away when it comes to a claim. What has been, for example, on the claims, the response from your policyholders on having them schedule a time on Friday, perhaps if it's Tuesday?
Yeah, I've not found any problems with it. I think they really appreciate it. And again, I think the biggest part of it is the communication. If you have people trying to reach out to you, leaving voicemails or emailing you, and you don't have time right then, so you just let it sit there, that's what they don't appreciate. People understand that we're busy, especially in a time like this. And I don't really even frame it in a way that this is my specific link for claims. I just use that link when I send it to them. And I also have a pre-made email template that kind of walks them through step by step. If you're filing a claim, this is what you're going to need, right? This is where you can find a link to all the claim forms online. This is where you use and how you set up your online claim account, your smart claim account, right? And then at the bottom it says, if you have any issues with this, click here to schedule based on my availability. So on their perception, they think that's the only availability I have, and truly it is, because that's the only availability I've time blocked it for. So policyholders really appreciate just a quick response of some sort, as long as you're giving them that quick response and setting the expectation of when you'll have time to get with them. They're perfectly fine with it. I've not had any problems at all.
And I love the structure behind that. And whether you're an associate or a district, that can be absolutely amazing. What a great use of that tool. So what has been then the impact on your business? How has this changed, or has it changed the time that you have to spend on other things?
Yeah, I think number one, in operating virtually, like many of us have had to adapt and do more enrollments through call center, virtual enrollments, take meetings through a virtual meeting settings such as WebEx. It's just really helped streamline a lot of things for me. I think it's helped give a more professional feel from us to our clients, broker partners, etc. It's also forced me to time block a little farther out. And knowing that if I'm sending a available link out, that whether it be continuous scheduling or for an enrollment that's coming up in 2 weeks, I need to have my calendar prepared to make sure that I'm not double dipping any time. When I first kind of started using it, I'd sent the link out and somebody would schedule a time, right in the middle of my day, a couple weeks away, and I'm like, oh no. So I think that was a big thing for me, forced me to time block a little farther out, but I'm also just finding more creative ways to use it, right, and just streamline a lot of the things that I do. Because, like you guys have all mentioned on this call, it's been awesome information. It's just all about profitability and how I can make sure I'm allocating my time the best way.
I love that. So now the vast majority of the attendees on this call are newer coordinators or about to be new coordinators. So you've had some great success already as a fairly new DSC. So what advice would you want to share with them when it comes to managing their business, their profitability, and of course, their most important resource, like you've already alluded to, their time?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you, Monica, what Ryan, what Jolyn has been talking about on this call. And I think the most important step is first identifying what's most important. What those biggest drivers of your district and team's success and profitability are going to be. And if Aflac hasn't made it clear enough by the changes in bonus structure, I'll give you guys a hint: producer growth. No, but seriously, right? My market director, Alex Miro's ingrained in my head, you have to reproduce yourself at least once a year to be successful, to continue to scale. And so with that, remember and don't lose sight that this position is all about helping your people exceed, right? So invest in your people, invest your time, your money, your energy, resources in your people. Because while I personally think your people winning is the most rewarding part of being a DSC, our companies also set it up to where it's the most profitable part of being a DSC, right? So with that, be consistent with your preparation, with your time blocks, hold yourself to those time blocks. And again, streamline as many things as possible that either don't give you or that are energy draining to you or that are not important to your profitability. So those are my biggest tips that I'm continually trying to get better at and have been taught and passed down by some great leaders and mentors I've had over my Aflac career.
That is pretty stellar advice, Logan. And you giving us your time this morning has been something that we very much appreciate as well. Now, I do have one last question. And guys, as I'm asking this question, please know that there is a Q&A button I believe it's on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you have a question for Logan, he has agreed to take some of those. So if you do want to jot something in there, I'll definitely read that off to him. But Logan, last question for you is, what do you plan on doing for your birthday tomorrow?
Birthday tomorrow. Funny enough, I got a full calendar from start to finish. I got to go to the gym in the morning. I'm actually going to spend some time in the office, and then I'm going to hit the golf course with some friends and enjoy the rest of the evening. So I am looking forward to it. I'm getting old, and so I'm trying to enjoy my young years while I can.
That sounds fantastic. I love how you already have it calendared. All right, guys. Logan, thank you so much for the information that you've shared. I'm going to take a glance over here at the Q&A, and if there's anything that you guys have, please do let us know. I am Donnie Knoyer. I am having some issues, I believe, with internet, so I'm not sure if I can see anything in here. I see some happy birthdays to you. Those have come in, so happy early birthday to you, Logan.
Thank you.
Let's see. Brennan Bennett has asked, can we get Logan's claim email template, please?
Yeah, I can send that over to Don if he makes sure that it looks compliant, approved, and appropriate or whatever. I'll make sure that
Well, then you probably don't want to send it to Don. Just kidding. No, that's fine. That'll be perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Donnie. Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. One more question popping up here. Nope, another happy birthday. Man, you are loved. So, Logan, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. And I want to thank Ryan and Jolynn. I've had a great time working with them on this project as well. Mallory, thank you for all of the information you shared. And guys, with that, I am going to pass things over to Donnie Knoyer to wrap things up for the day. But mostly I want to thank you guys on the call, you guys for investing your time in this morning. And I wish you nothing but the best. And of course, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, because I know I won't get to talk to most of you before then. So, Donnie C., I'm passing it back to you. And I am out. Thanks, guys.
Awesome job, Monica. Way to go, Logan. Great job. Happy birthday, brother. My God, that was a lot. Oops, let's see if we got video going here. Oh, we're going to run with it either way. Guys, that was a lot of information. And thank you again for Ryan, Jolynn, Mallory, Monica, and Logan for kind of setting the tone for what these classes are going to be over the next 2 weeks. I love the fact that there was one common theme throughout the entire thing, and that was on purpose and intentional. Everything that they talked about, everything they discussed, was specifically designed around how do you do this on purpose. It was interesting. We talk about average weekly producers and growth. And I don't know about you guys, but my training from a district standpoint or my business planning was the Chris Tarno school of more plus more equals more. And that's really all we ever talked about with average weekly producers. Oh, go do more and you'll win. But to sit back and actually think about running this like a business. I mean, Ryan, I'm not going to lie. My mind is blown thinking about how to actually take that process from a district level. We talk about brand new agents, and I share in flight school all the time about how important it is to think of yourself, if I was owning a Burger King franchise, knowing how many Whoppers need to go out the door every single day to make sure I'm getting payroll covered, or how many Frosties need to be sold to make sure that the lights stay on in the business. Taking that same analytical approach, but how many of us have ever sat down and actually done that from a district level? To know how many average weekly producers we need to hit our quota. But to be honest with you, don't even worry about quota. I mean, yes, obviously you want to hit quota, but how many average weekly producers do you need to pay your bills? What do you need to be producing as a team to help cover your income? I mean, guys, that is absolutely huge, and it's something we don't really talk about very often. So I absolutely love taking that analytical approach to this business. Jolynn jumped in and really talked about being intentional and, more importantly, having your expectations and showing and sharing those expectations and being transparent up and down the chain with your district and your agents. Mallory jumped in and talked about the 4 pillars, but more importantly, how your activities fit into those, and leading from the front and showing from example. My God, I loved Monica's exercise about the business planning, because I don't know about you all, every time I've been, I'm not going to lie, any position I've had with Aflac, it constantly feels like we're spinning plates. And we're constantly working to figure out, okay, what fire can I put out now? We're running around. But if you truly think about what activities break down and drive your business, and that's where you get your time priority, my God, your calendar opens up greatly. And then more importantly, the calendar management. And guys, every single successful person I've seen across Aflac, the one thing they can attribute that success to is solid calendar management. Guys, I was on the call when Logan talked about the IVS personal scheduler, and my God, mind blown when just even thinking about, use it for the account piece, but this is how I schedule my business, and this is how I schedule my one-on-one coaching. This is how I coordinate my open blocks of time for my field agents so I can be there to run appointments and I'm not getting double booked. Guys, that is a great allocation of that tool, and a huge shout out to Logan for bringing that out to us. So great job, man. But guys, a lot of great information, and honestly, we did a good job today of saying, hey, here's all the stuff that you need to be aware of. And I absolutely love how everything we talked about today is going to naturally transition into everything we're going to bring to the table over the next 2 weeks. So again, just as a reminder, next Thursday, the 10th, we're going to have a discussion around recruiting, but more importantly, just like Mallory was talking about, intentionally recruiting. Not necessarily just, hey, let's get as many people as we possibly can in the gate so we have bodies, but let's hire to our market. Let's hire to what we need. Let's hire to skill sets. And we're going to have a great discussion around that one. And then we're also going to talk about, once we get those agents involved, how do we onboard? What does that proper trading cadence look like to make sure that we're spending our time intentionally and doing those activities on purpose, but not only from a new agent standpoint, but also how can we apply that into our veterans? So, guys, that's actually from 9 to noon next Thursday, the 10th. On Friday, the 11th, we're going to actually bring in and talk about asset management. Again, not necessarily the entire whole list of everything we need to know, because, guys, that's an 8 to 10 hour class. But specifically, how do we leverage our book of business to grow more business? How do we use our book to grow what we're doing? And more importantly, how do we take advantage of those opportunities? And finally, bringing in and talking about broker relationships. Again, not necessarily to dedicate all of our time to broker, but how do we do a couple easy things to grow our broker business and take advantage of those resources and partnership? And then finally, on Friday, the 18th from 9 to noon, we're going to dive deep into performance coaching and how do we put all of this stuff together? Because, guys, every single aspect of what we talked about technically drives into how we coach and how we develop and how we grow our teams. Because, again, just like we kicked off the class, everything we're doing right now from headquarters moving forward is all about regrowing and developing your teams, rebuilding what happened over this last 12 months, and more importantly, the teams that are going to be able to do that efficiently and quickly, those are going to be the teams that are going to win in 2021 and moving forward. So, guys, phenomenal day today. Thank you all for showing up and being here. We will email out the training deck, Ryan's PDF calculator. We're going to do the income calculator, Mallory's scorecard. We're going to work on putting together the training decks as well as the recording. So you guys should have all of that later this afternoon. If not, I guarantee you'll have it by Saturday. But I appreciate everyone for being involved. We'll also send out the links. Make sure you guys register for those training classes on Thursday, Friday, and then the following Friday. Great information coming. Thank you all for being a part of this, and more importantly, everyone that helped put this together. So great job, guys. Have a happy rest of the Friday. I will see you all next Thursday. So thank you.